Welcome to Prime Suspects for your weekly insider's look behind the counter of Prime Sports. Alongside Joe Brennan Jr. and Adam Bjorn, I'm your host, Matt Landis. Second time in 3 weeks, guys. We're coming to the audience a bit later than usual, this time with no Bet Bash hangover to blame, so we will cut to the chase. This week's topics include Kentucky exceeding initial revenue projections as Prime prepares to enter the state, Colorado's Division of Gaming taking a moral stance, and sweepstakes betting taking center stage, at least for now. Diving into the latest from inside Prime Sports, per Corey Elam of Fox 56 News in Lexington, Kentucky, gaming experts say sports betting revenue has far exceeded initial projections. More specifically, from the Bluegrass State's first 9 months of legal sports betting, Kentucky cashed out more than $37 million in taxes and licensing fees, dwarfing the forecast of $23 million. From September of last year through June of this year, the state also took in almost $2.1 billion in handle. Joe, what does all this mean to you as Prime prepares to go live in Kentucky?
I mean, obviously it's encouraging, and we're very eager to open up there. I think anybody who either read or listened to Billy Walters' autobiography might be on some level unsurprised by the numbers, because it sounds like Kentucky is a hotbed of degenerate gamblers, or at least big gamblers. I did think it was a bit weird that they folded the licensing fees piece into it, since that's not really going to be a recurring thing. So if they're using that as a benchmark, they are going to see a drop off in year two, I would imagine. But all joking aside, it's encouraging to hear a state market get off the ground, and for people to be surprised that it's overperforming compared to the projections. I mean, too often we've heard in the past from state lawmakers, they watch like year 1 and 2 click by and they're like, we're not making anywhere near the money that we were told we were going to make. So it is encouraging to hear that the state is, or the Commonwealth of Kentucky, let's not make that mistake, that they're happy with the direction that this is headed. And, hopefully there's room left for Prime once we open up there, hopefully by the end of this year.
Adam, some encouraging initial thoughts from Joe. What do you make of Kentucky soundly beating its initial revenue projections?
Well, hopefully it means they keep their tax rate as where their tax rate is currently. Not that I know what that is currently, but no, I mean, for me, it was, picked out the state because, again, it's a gambling state. I think it's, got the second most borders of any state in the US. So that was another reason why I liked it. And then my plan is just to go to Churchill Downs, which is our partner, CDI, and sit at the track and watch horse racing while I try and pick up customers on the sports betting side. So, I mean, I'm very biased on this state. I love this state, having now been to this state a couple of times and also driven around outside of Lexington to all the horse farms. I'm looking forward to just to go down there and hang out, go back and see my friend Birdstone at the retirement farm. And, hopefully we can add to those numbers. And next year when they run it again, I'll be even happier. So,
it's good to know that our head bookmaker is going to be mucking out stalls somewhere in Lexington at some point this season. But
hell yeah. I mean, if Windstar or any of those others listening, Coolmore or whatnot, if you need a little hand down there, I'll come down. I'll spend the day with the horses, speeding and mucking out.
It does kind of beg the question, at what point in the future will Prime add racing to its mix? And I know that that's something that, a couple of the others have done, but they don't really seem to be leaning into it. Obviously, FanDuel has their piece. I know that's something that from our perspective, in addition to Adam spending so much time with Mr. Ed down there, we really would like to add racing to our mix, since it's a good cross sell, and there's betting content 365 days a year, 24 hours a day.
Well, there might be some time in Adam's schedule to cover some good ground in terms of both of those areas soon, because some bets seem to be coming off the table, at least across part of the regulated market in the United States. Guys, hopping from Kentucky over to Colorado and our water cooler segment this week. According to Fair Play Initiative on Twitter, the Colorado Division of Gaming has taken a moral stance against more than 100 betting markets, most for being too negative. Fair Play Initiative went on to say the door remains open for sportsbooks to request the removed markets with softer wording. For example, in Major League Baseball, you can no longer bet no on a player to hit a home run, but you can bet that player to go under half the home run. Different wording, same outcome. Adam, we'll start with you here. To quote your posted response, WTF, followed by 4 emojis for rolling on the floor laughing, followed by madness in the world of regulatory oversight and micromanagement. Go ahead and expand on this for us.
I think I posted somewhere else where they obviously just woke up bored one day and thought they need a headline and let's throw out some stuff. I mean, the example you gave just shows the madness of it. Look, I get, and I know the NFL and had discussions with them, they don't want to do the penalty stuff. Will there be a penalty, first penalty, those kind of things. I get all those ones. But that one in particular, like, there's not many home runs hit in a game. So that's usually like a minus 500, minus 600 on the no anyway. There's not that many people laying that side of it. There's usually people taking shots on the positive side when they're going to a game and want to bet their favorite player and that actually hitting a home run, which brings excitement to the game. On the cricket side of it, the next man out, again, you've got 2 people in. Neither of them are trying to go out. Like, the whole purpose of the game is to stay in, keep making runs. So again, one of them's obviously the next man out, if that's the case. So some of the things they've really left big question marks as to why they went into this. Some, I get them, team to commit the first turnover and that. But they're guaranteed there's no one out there sort of going into a game with this thought of, okay, I've got this much writing on this thing, let's commit the first foul or commit the first. Yes, it has happened. There's, spot fixing and all these kind of things and whatnot, but they've kind of gone over the top. They've obviously laid it out and they've shown already that you can reword it or do it a little differently. But yeah, there's a few there that just don't make sense. And it just seems like they went through with their, marker and just tick, 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 tick. Let's throw this thing out without that much thought behind it. I'd be curious if someone actually sort of went to them and said, why did you do it for this one? Why did you do it for that one? On some of these questionable ones, I highly doubt they have an answer, but each to their own. They build their own catalogs. Everyone's playing by the same rules. And as you said, they've given the opportunity for someone to go in, if it's really that big of a market, to say, we want to do this. We want to reword it like this. It's not in a negative fashion. On that list, there was some stuff as well. Will someone be a heavyweight in 2022? So there was some old bets that didn't exist and a few other reasons why they made this list, duplicate entries, whatnot. But yeah, it doesn't seem like they have enough work to do up there in Colorado. And it seems like because of all the exits from all these other books and now the exchanges heading into the sweepstakes world, yeah, they're just looking for something to do in the mornings after their coffee.
All right, Joe, that's going to be a fun one for you to follow. To tee you up, I have been hearing some people point to this as a response to the Jontay Porter scandal. How much would you agree with the sentiment that this could be well-intentioned regulation gone wrong?
When it comes to regulators, I'm always going to default to saying, I think that they have the best of intentions, but markets often in trying to overcorrect. And I think that's kind of what's happened here. You can see how the Jontay Porter thread could be, and what he's accused of having done could say okay, well, if we're saying you can't have wagers on the downside of a performance negative, then it makes it harder for somebody to do that, to have that kind of negative influence. However, in the wrong hands, you can see how it then becomes kind of like a farcical tool here to well, we're just going to get rid of all the negative language, the negative bets. And you're okay, now that we're all having a good laugh about it, the fact that you can go back and propose a rewording of the wager and to maybe get it readmitted, I don't know if that's also farcical or not. Are we getting to, is this a matter of politically correct wording of a wager, or are we really looking for ways of being able to offer catalogs that disincentivize people who would be bad actors to encourage a Jontay Porter type incident? Again, overcorrection. My guess is that there won't be a whole lot of states really looking to follow Colorado down this path, at least right now, or at least until Colorado has a chance to kind of readjust here. But early signs seem to be kind of they kind of exceeded their brief and kind of need to pull this thing back in.
Well, from the fall of certain markets in Colorado to the rise of sweepstakes betting across much of the United States, our look ahead segment this week going to be a meaty one. Profit Exchange is relaunched as Profit X, shifting from exchange to the sweepstakes model in an attempt to scale across more than 40 states. At the same time, the American Gaming Association is asking regulators to take a closer look at sweepstakes operators. And in a potential sign of things to come, Delaware has sent a cease and desist to a company that owns several popular sweepstakes sites. Joe, we'll start with you here. A lot to unpack, from educating casual bettors on what the sweepstakes model is, to the legality of the sweepstakes model, to what the road ahead could look like. Before we go any deeper, for the unacquainted, I'm wondering if we can take just about 30 seconds here to hear how you would describe the sweepstakes betting model overall.
God, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me to do that, because usually this is where I get very dismissive. How about we recommend instead that if you have questions about the ins and outs, the ABCs, the nuts and bolts of sweepstakes gaming, we highly recommend Captain Jack Andrews' video over there, our friend from Unabated, who did a very nice piece on YouTube that maybe we can include the link in this show's notes this week. Because if I'm asked to do it, I'll say something to the effect of, well, you come on and for your cash, you get dwarf gold coins that you then bet on sporting events. And then if you ever want to cash out after winning additional dwarf coins, you can exchange those for money or prizes. That didn't sound dismissive at all. It's interesting how in just a short amount of time, sweepstakes gaming, which used to be known as social gaming, social gambling, it's old wine in a new bottle, a model that's been around for a while, but has really kind of gotten traction now. One, because of the states that still have not legalized here in the US for sports betting. And then also, boy, you couldn't have painted a bigger target on this industry than having like Profit Exchange and then our friends over there at Novig. Did you know they went to Harvard? They've now devolved from being licensed real money operations to being in the sweepstakes space. I know there's a lot of fans of this space. I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I did find it jarring last week when Profit X's pricing was included in the Unabated odds boards. So they're being listed alongside the odds that you might get on Prime or Circa or DraftKings or FanDuel. And I found that jarring at the moment, because they're really not in the same business. But this is the thing, and I know some people are probably going to disagree with this. And right now, the loophole that these sweepstakes operations are exploiting, it's pretty rock solid, and they feel pretty confident that it'll stand up to any tests in any of the courts. And with the existing laws as they are, I would say, they're probably right about that. The problem is those laws aren't written in stone. And especially with both the AGA and then also FanDuel calling it out specifically within the last 2 weeks, I don't think the problem is necessarily regulators or the courts. I think the problem is going to be state legislatures. And setting aside prime sports, but you have big operations like FanDuel, DraftKings, the casino companies, where they've invested a lot of money into being in the regulated real money sports betting industry here in all these states. To see other operations similar to the argument that they had with the DFS Plus guys, where they're offering essentially an analogous product, unregulated, without all the costs, without all the regulation, without all the taxes, all of those things. You can see why that would lead folks, probably in the AGA, which is a lobbying group, and the individual companies, to then rush to their state legislature and say, you guys got to change the laws. We can't have this. That's what I imagine will happen if sweepstakes, sports betting, and casino continues to grow. They're not going to have to worry about the existing laws. It's the new ones that will probably come down the pike.
When it comes to lobbying efforts, Joe, from the bigger players in the space like FanDuel, I sense there's often a divergence between what they're looking to accomplish and what you would prefer to see come to fruition. In this case, is it safe to say that if they're able to shutter some of the sweepstakes operations, being with Prime, that would be just fine in your book?
I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to make a call on that just yet. I know they think it would be fine. I know the EAGA think it would be fine. The difficulty here, and we talked about this, if you recall, during our live podcast from Bet Bash, is it's very difficult for the regulated space to be able to innovate. Okay. And at the time I said, like, I wonder if, for instance, like in particular, like Profit Exchange, ProfitX, and Novig, because they're invested in doing the exchange model, because it's very difficult for them to really find traction in the existing regulated space because of the fragmented state markets. And there's really only 2 states, Colorado and New Jersey, that allow that model. It's very tough for anybody to say like the exchange model will work or will not work. Okay. But using the sweepstakes model, now they're instantly available in how many markets? Like 30, 40 markets. And by using this existing sweepstakes loophole, they may get a better sense of whether this model can work in the United States, given the right conditions. And that could also be true of any number of other potential innovations in the gaming model, because sports betting really looks the same. The missed opportunity for these guys is if they use this loophole and then just offer a product that looks just like Prime Sports or looks just like, Fan Kings. It's just a sports book with a different mode of currency. I think it paints a huge target on them, because it allows the Fan Kings guys and the AGA to simply say, like, they're doing the same product as us with none of the costs and none of the tax liability, right? They're not innovating. They're doing the same thing as us. I think that's risky for them. But if they can use the opportunity to explore like new IP, new models, new user experiences, they may be able to put some time on the clock for them. But unfortunately, I think they're a big enough threat, or at least right now they're perceived as a big enough threat by the big brands, that I'd say that they're definitely on the clock and time is winding down.
Adam, building on Joe's comments, want to bring you back into the conversation as well. How would you describe your point of view on the current landscape and the ultimate fate of sweepstakes betting?
I think it'll be around for a while yet. I don't see any short-term happenings here. I think if they had just stuck to the casino aspect, they probably would have got a lot longer and not had this target painted on them as well. I think the fact they moved into the sports betting aspect of it, and then the exchanges went from trying to get legal licenses to going down the sweepstakes route, it just exposed it even more. Plus you've got, sports betting in 30 plus states and iGaming in, I think, 7 or less. So again, they just started to go into a territory that if they had have just kept it on the social casino side of it, then they would have had a lot longer. We look at Michigan sent cease and desists and they ceased. This Delaware story, and I sort of try to dig into it a bit further, but this was sent in February 2023. We're now August 2024, and it doesn't seem like that they've stopped operating then. So is it just they're going to pick and choose which cease and desist they listen to? Or are they just, thought Michigan wasn't a business state anyway and just moved out of it? Plus they're not in the Idahos, and I think Washington State's the other one that seems to be going after these things, which I think they also went after offshore gaming years ago. And I think the other side of it, the AGA, I mean, they just seem to come out and bitch and moan and complain about as much stuff as they can, rather than actually trying to target things that'll actually help the industry. I know there's been conversations about removing the excise tax. Like, go and lobby or push to have things done for the betterment, rather than sitting in a corner, which they've done for pretty much their whole existence that I've understood, and said, oh, the big bad offshore, go get them, when there's nothing that they can really do about it. Why not, again, look at these minimum bet limits in Massachusetts and the conversation there, have the operators building better products, being more customer service savvy and driven than just always coming out on the negative side. Maybe they need to go to Colorado and hang out with those guys, looking at all the negativity aspects of the industry. There's so many better ways to do all this. Like, sure, I think the sweepstakes are purely playing, these are the rules of the games and we're going to play within them. Good luck to them. It's a bit like the affiliate game. If I was, could go back 25 years, I'd become an affiliate, not a bookmaker. If I could go back 5 years before the Prime thing, I think we'd be in Sweepstakes right now, not in, battling the hard yards of what prime sports is and adding more states in the regulated aspect of it. People found a loophole in the business and the regulations, and they pushed for it. And the VGWs and all that, they've been around quite a while. They've been building up these things for a number of years. It's just that now there's a light shone on it and everybody looking at it. Nothing's an overnight success when you dig in deep enough and understand that they've been out there building this stuff. They were around when it was social casinos and different jurisdictions within different parts of the world. Good luck to them. They've done what they've done. They're building it up. Again, if we were looking at this differently, it's probably the space to be rather than the hard yards in the regulated world. But until the legislators and the regulators and that kind of get together, nothing's going to happen. This will just continue it as it is. And yes, I can't remember the quote offhand, but something about, the deep dark holes of the gambling gray world and whatnot. Yeah, because nobody's really building products. Nobody's building legislations and taxes and that to be able to really attack this thing and make it where everybody can eat and a product can be regulated within a fair means to compete against the sweepstakes. So when they keep making these rules and making it harder for the ones that are playing by the rules, and yet there's these gaps in the legislations and whatnot to go do it that way, more often than not, you're going to go that other way because it's easier. It's less work. It costs less money. It's kind of been highlighted, I guess, the last 4 to 6 weeks with some pivots and different things like that, but it's been around for a while. But I don't see it going anywhere. So you've really got to just pick your spot, decide which way you're going to push, and then ultimately play that game that you're in, but just the way it is.
One thing that might be a wild card here right now is, particularly when you think about states like California and Texas and Florida, the train is stalled, I would say, or the trip's gotten significantly longer in those states, those big markets, which DraftKings, FanDuel, those guys, their success in the public markets has been largely reliant on, opening up new states, growth by addition, that kind of thing. And now that that's kind of significantly slowed down, if not stalled, what I think might be interesting is FanDuel's already indicated that they have concern about it, but I haven't heard anything really about DraftKings. DraftKings is the one of the two bigs that is most exposed when it comes to growth. They don't have the rest of the world operation that FanDuel has through Flutter. They're not backstopped by like a true global gaming operation. They're in the US. Okay. What if, DraftKings, similar to how they struck out with NFTs, they bought with their purchase of the Lottery Courier operation, they've shown at least a little bit of risk appetite when it comes to models here in the US that they'll play around with, that they can find growth. So it would be interesting to see a big like DraftKings suddenly say, hey, we're going to add this too. I mean, remember, that's not such a far-fetched idea, because these guys at one point, they were DFS and they were lucky the way events kind of flew together here, and they were able to diversify into sports betting and then casino gambling. Since now the growth is slowed down there and they're having some trouble, look at the dumb move that they made there a couple of weeks ago that they had to back out of as far as the winner's tax or the winner's fee. If suddenly DraftKings said like, well, we're going to introduce it too. Well, if that's available, we'll do it. Then that makes a really interesting dynamic. If you have one of the bigs suddenly saying like, this is going to be part of our growth strategy, our diversification and growth strategy. Yeah, that's a lot harder for everybody else in the industry and push back against. And then we're all saying like, are we all running to open up our real money operations and then our dwarf gold coin operations so that we can cover the United States?
Because ultimately the sweepstakes, they're using the geolocation stuff, they're using the KYC, they're using the AML stuff. There is stuff there. One of the other aspects of it is how is it taxed? What stage of the play is it taxed? Is this more of an IRS kind of thing coming in and spotting something that's not within the realms or something happening like that? So again, this is it's a land of landmines, but again, one of those big ones saying, well, acquire this company. They're in these things. It's not against the law. There's no legalities against it. It's playing within the rules that are within those states and the federal thing at that time. Maybe it's frowned upon, but when you're big enough in that, I mean, why not go after that stuff and do that to see what that beats? Because at the end of the day, all that's going to happen for all these companies is cease and desist letters. No one's going to be, put into bankruptcy. No one's heading to jail. There's none of these things going to happen. So ultimately, it's just a business decision, diving into it. And when you get that letter, you just decide whether you're going to abide by it or not. I mean, cease and desist letters in this world has been around for a very long time in a sense of these, countries sending it to sports books and stuff like that.
One other interesting wrinkle that Adam mentioned, and I'll end with that, is on the taxation side, it's less so on the operators, it seems, than maybe on the players themselves. Particularly there are specific IRS code regarding how revenue is treated when it comes to these sweepstakes. And there's some nuance there that I don't think is necessarily being made clear to the players regarding money in and money out of the sweepstakes casinos and sports books. And that might be one thing that hangs them up. But if they're able to negotiate that and better educate the consumers and be able to handle that part, they'll make it a lot easier. But it isn't like risk-free running across open fields for the sweepstakes guys either. The taxation part is an important part they're going to have to get right.
Yeah, Joe, that's one thing that I discussed with the aforementioned Captain Jacket Bet Bash. Being in California, I was eager to get more insight from him on what sweepstakes could represent in terms of opportunity for me as a bettor. And he was really clear on making sure you understand the taxation part of it to cover yourself to that end. And maybe we'll find out more about that as sweepstakes potentially gain more traction across a lot of the country. My final follow-up for this week's episode would take us back a couple minutes, Joe, to your point that as a wild card, maybe some of the bigger players already in the regulated market decide to hop on the sweepstakes train as well. If that were to happen, is this something that Prime Sports would refuse on principle, or is it an opportunity that would be too good to pass up from a financial perspective?
God, Matt, you really want to pay me into a corner here and get me to say something incriminating, don't you? Right?
It's right. I'll say, Planetech will look at it and see if we find an operator in that space, and let's keep Prime nice and clean.
Yeah. Hey, what a great! I'll stand on principle. No. I mean, Mrs. Brennan will definitely say principle is not going to send your kids through college. No, I will take a look, and this is something. This is to be continued. I don't think that the sweepstakes guys are planning on sitting back and taking any facial punches from the AGA or anybody else. They've formed their own professional association, their business association, which is what everybody does when they anticipate that there are going to be challenges, legal and otherwise. I wish I could remember the name of it off the top of my head, but my good friend Jeff Ifra, the gaming attorney, is one of the people who are advising that. So they're clearly also lining up really smart people to advise them and go to war for them. So I imagine that this, as Adam said earlier, this isn't going to be resolved anytime soon. If there is going to be action in state legislatures, that's slow. It's slow when it comes to legalization. It's slow when it comes to adjusting the laws on things like this. I would imagine the next couple of years, you're going to have plenty of people who are going to have an opportunity to say, do we just stuff our pockets while we can and then wait for the inevitable cease and desist letter to come, or the states change their laws. But in the meantime, California, people are California dreaming. There's a great way for DraftKings or somebody like that to be able to tap that marketplace under existing laws. So, I'm sure we'll be hearing more, not less, about this topic.
All right. Well, to tie a bow around the conversation for now, it sounds like the sweepstakes model may evolve in surprising ways, or its days might be numbered. However that shakes out to the audience, you can continue to count on us to carry on. Thank you for making us a part of your week, and we'll catch you next week right back here on Prime Suspects. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at Prime Sportsbook, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn 2. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.